Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 Educators Ag Institute. My name is Cassidy. I'll be your host for today. Now, this is the student farm at Penn State secondary session. So just so you all are aware, we have a little bit of housekeeping to take care of. So first of all, there is in the chat box a link to the pre-test. If you have not taken that, please do so now. We cannot see or hear you. Your audio and video are off. So if you need to talk, please use the chat box. Make sure the drop down says all panelists and attendees as well, so everyone can see everything. And we will be using the chat box for questions as well. So don't use the Q&A for questions. Use the chat box for everything. And just remember to be respectful as everyone can see everything. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Leslie and Jade.
Great, thank you, Cassidy. Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here with us this morning. And I just saw somebody asked in the chat, will there be different information presented in this than the 9 a.m. session? Jade answered, no, it's the same. So just to affirm that, if you were just in the prior one, most of the content here will be the same. A few of the lesson examples we adjusted for a middle high school audience, but by and large, the content will be the same. So no need to sit in twice. So Jade and I are here with you today from the student farm at Penn State. We're based at University Park in State College, Pennsylvania, so right in the middle of the state. We can't see or hear any of you, unfortunately. This virtual space makes that difficult. Hopefully someday soon we can all be back in person. And if you do get up to State College and want to stop by and see the farm in person sometime, please do. As COVID restrictions are lifting, we will certainly have more opportunities for that. Oh, thanks, Lindsay. That's very kind. So to get started, we'll introduce ourselves a little bit more, but before we jump into our slides, we wanted to get at least a little bit of sense of who you are and who's in the room, given that we can't really see you. So we have a short poll with just a few questions. If you wouldn't mind answering these, here's the first question, just what's the primary grade level that you teach? Just to give us a sense of what kind of grades. And wow, I'm seeing the answers come in. It looks like it's pretty much all grades. Let's see, about half of you have answered. Looks like so far about 20 of you are 6th, 7th, 8th. Oh, it's multiple choice. I see. So yeah, if you're like in the middle school, then you might teach multiple grades. Okay. It looks like most of you answered, so I'm going to end it and I can share it here to see. So it looks like you guys are a very represent a broad range of grades. That's helpful to know. After school programming and then club time. Awesome. Yeah. That's a great space to be into. Another question that we have just to get to know you is your primary subject that you teach. You should be able to see this. I think this is a single answer question. We have several ag teachers here. Business and technology. Awesome. Nature-based outdoor ed, gardening, art, and composting. Wow, all of those sound so fun. FCS. Norma, I loved my FCS teacher in high school. I was in FCCLA. Yeah. Right, yeah, that's the club. And did parliamentary procedure. You should be able to see these results. So a couple English, couple math, few science teachers. Wow, a lot of you, 10 of you are ag teachers. And then other, thanks for adding that in the chat. That's helpful to know. And an art teacher. Okay, so pretty good diversity there. Next question is related to that one, but we're curious what subject you'd be most interested in incorporating food or gardening content into. This might kind of match what you teach since you always have like specific subjects. Not everyone has answered, but I'm going to go ahead and stop it just because I think since you have your own subject areas of focus, then that's most likely the area that you'd be wanting to incorporate this into. Yeah, so that follows along. Okay, we'll try to think of some or like share some specific examples along the way in these areas, but that's great. So many of you are in ag. That's really awesome. Just two more questions. We are curious to know your comfort level with your own like kitchen skills, chopping and the like. Okay, looks like most of you have responded. So we've got some people here who are comfortable in the kitchen. That's good to know. Hopefully that's an opportunity then for bringing some more plants and interesting foods into the classroom in different ways. And then last question is gardening comfort level. I guess if we have lots of ag educators, then there's probably a high level of comfort with gardening. Okay, I'll go ahead and end it. I think that's most of you. So yeah, pretty high level of comfort. For those of you who are maybe not as comfortable with it, hopefully some of the ideas that we'll share today, which we tried to think of some examples and things where you could bring plants in the classroom that don't require a lot of skill, but also don't require a lot of resources either. So hopefully there's something for everybody this morning. Great. Thank you and welcome. And like I said, if you're ever in person, would love to meet you here at State College. So we can get into our question then, knowing a little bit of who's in the room. Let me see here. Getting the slide screen sharing is a little tricky. Just 1 second. Okay. Hopefully you all can see a title slide. Jade, is that accurate? Can you give me a thumbs up?
Yep, I can see it.
Great. Okay. Uh-oh, it's going to spin again. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So just to get us started, I'm going to open the chat. Cassidy mentioned this, but I'm going to just reiterate. If we could just stick to the chat, that'll enable Jade and I to keep an eye on it. And we would love for you to ask questions or add comments or ideas along the way. It's, challenging to be super interactive in a virtual space. But the more we can use the chat and share, that's our kind of collective learning space. So please feel free to ask questions along the way. I've got a couple screens going here. You might see me kind of looking back and forth. So I'll try to keep it on that, and Jade and I'll jump in with each other too if we notice a question and need to pause and answer it. So let's get going. Just to introduce myself a little bit more. So I direct the student farm program here at Penn State. I've been in my role for 7 years and I've lived in Pennsylvania for 10 years. Originally from Nebraska. My husband and I moved out here 10 years ago and did grad work here in rural sociology. Have an undergrad in horticulture and a background in farming education, previously with beginning immigrant and refugee farmers, and then here at Penn State, obviously predominantly with college students. I have a wonderful little puppy dog who hopefully won't bark today, doing Zoom, but he is ground bug control in my own garden. So an important part of my own home garden system. And then I raise chickens, which are lots of fun for eggs. And then just a photo of some ladies on the farm who came for an event. Lots of fun activities and things here in the State College area. And then Jade, there's your slide.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jade, and I graduated from Penn State in December 2020 with a degree in agribusiness management and a minor in sustainability leadership in food systems. So post-grad, I am now an AmeriCorps member with the food systems program. But while I was a student, I was the president of the Student Farm Club and an intern on the farm for, I guess, a season and a half. And these are just some photos of me. The middle one is me on the farm and me at the CSA holding an eggplant. And then, of course, me with my lovely dog, Cody, who is sleeping behind me. So if he starts barking, please excuse that. And I'm just really excited about this. So yeah, that's me.
Oh yeah, we have some CSA folks here. Sorry, I was just adding a little chat to Susan. That's cool to hear you do career exploration. Okay, so we have about 90 minutes together this morning, early afternoon. So just to give you an outline of what we plan to cover, we have 3 main sections. Hopefully we can have time for Q&A. We didn't really in the last session, but now that we have some experience, maybe we can do our timing a little better and leave some more time for open Q&A. But again, please ask questions along the way and we'll field those as we go. So our plan this morning is to give you a virtual tour of the student farm and introduce the program, talk a little bit about the mission and the programming that we do, and then some photos and a little video that some of the interns made of one aspect of their work on the farm. And then we'll move into some ideas for integrating food, gardens, and plants into the curriculum, different kind of resourcing that you might have or be able to acquire to bring gardens and food in. And then thirdly, we will do our hands-on workshop demonstration. So that's the little microgreen kits that you all should have received. So we'll actually do a lesson together with those. So with that, we can jump into introducing you all to the student farm. Big picture, we are under the Sustainability Institute here at Penn State, and we utilize the UN Sustainable Development Goals as the main frame for our work and talking with students about sustainability. I think these are really helpful to this combined with agriculture helps students to see all the ways that sustainability is not just environmentalism, but also it's, goal 2, no hunger. And we do have a lot of students who are very interested in ideas of food justice or food insecurity and addressing those through the farm as well. As a program, more focused, our mission and goals are really threefold. It's around education, building community, and then local foods for campus. So obviously we are a farm that's based at a higher ed institution. So education is really at the core of everything we do. And by having a farm, it's really wonderful to be able to have that hands-on and real world learning that we make available to students. Community is another big piece, and we do that through a lot of events and other kinds of outreach. If you guys remember like your own undergrad, sometimes you can feel like you're just in a community, just for that university or just for that education. I think for our students, it's been really valuable for them to feel like they're actually members of the broader community of State College. And then thirdly, farm to campus. So we have produce that the students grow, and then they provide it to the campus community through a CSA and then through selling directly to the dining commons. So I just have a few slides to kind of dive into what each of those look like, and then the photos. So to orient you just a little bit to the farm, not sure who's been to State College or been to campus here, but you've probably come to the creamery if you've been to campus. So here's where the farm is relative to the creamery. This is a route we encourage students to take. It's a nice little back road of Penn State, great for biking or walking, just under 2 miles. If you're driving, the best way is to come up Fox Hollow, or if you're ever just driving through town, you may have seen it or be on the lookout for us in the future. As you're driving 99 here, especially heading east, if you look down hill to your right, you get a really nice bird's eye view of the farm from there. And then what you would see right now on the farm is some changes, some new developments that have been in the works for the past couple of years. So we were established in 2016, and we were at that time granted an acre as a pilot, but we now have 4 acres of land, and we have deer fencing around that whole 4 acres. Today, what you would see if you come out there is these kind of lighter blue structures are high tunnels. The plan is for 6, so that's what these other 3 show. But for now, we've built the first 3, and they look like greenhouses, but they're called high tunnels, and you do in-ground growing in those. And we'll have some photos showing kind of what those can do too. You would see our new fields. They were plowed recently, not yet planted, but that'll be part of our expanded field production operation here soon as well. And then all of this is yet to come. There's, feasibility studies and other things, but the hope here is that we can have a more permanent space for events and the like. If you've been to Penn State or been to the Arboretum and seen their building, it's kind of something along those lines, but with lots of tool storage for the farm. So just a few slides on education, on community, and on local foods. So within Penn State, we bring learning into the classroom, but also bring classes out onto the farm. And when they come to the farm, it might be just like a one-time tour or a field lab or something, but we also host a number of capstones where we're kind of like the client for a semester for students to do a project. And some of those include like design build type projects. We've had architecture students and engineering students who've actually like built some of the physical infrastructure of the farm. We also engage students across the community, like I said, working with community partners, and then also across the whole Commonwealth. Penn State has campuses all around Pennsylvania, and several of the Commonwealth campuses now have gardens or farms. So if you're located in an area near one of the Penn State campuses, that might be a resource to explore and reach out. I know for a number of them, they would love to see the college students be able to help develop lessons and do some education for like high schoolers or middle schoolers. So that could be a partnership where those college kids are getting some experience, but also your students are engaging. And, I could see that being part of that kind of career exploration piece as well that Susan mentioned, in getting to interact with college students and learning what kind of majors they're in and what they hope to do someday. So that's something to maybe consider or keep in mind. I mentioned like architecture and engineering, but we've worked with a lot of different groups, and if we can do this here and work with business students and English majors and all of that, then certainly I think there's lots of opportunity at the secondary level too to engage students in many ways. We've had law students even be involved with the farm and provide some kind of legal and risk management advising to the program too. Oh, this is a photo here. This was the architecture students. They built some of our first sheds out on the farm. And it's crazy because like these students, they come in as freshmen hoping to be architects. Many of them have never even held a hammer. So the goal of that course was to put hammer and nails, drill and screws in their hands and have them like actually put something together and handle tools. So it's cool that we're able to be the kind of the host or the client for those kind of projects. I did want to mention this. This might not relate directly to your students, but it could if they are looking at coming up to Penn State. We have a new food systems minor here now. It's open to students in all majors. It's a cross-college minor, and it's meant to be a broad exploration of food systems. So if you have students who are thinking about like a specific career area like nutrition, this would be a great way for them to get some exposure to broader ag topics through the minor while still having that deep curriculum in their, in their focus major. Or if you have your own kids who are coming up to Penn State and who are into ag and food, this would be something to tell them about as well. Another really important part of the education that happens on the student farm is through internships that we host. So we have both paid and for credit interns. And if you do stop by sometime and you see students out working, most likely is the interns who are out there. These are the folks who, maintain the farm day to day. In addition, we do host classes who might help work, or clubs, or like club sports or fraternities or sororities, groups that need volunteer hours. They'll come and do service with us. And we do also, as part of our kind of community outreach, host community volunteer days too. Being at Penn State, research is also important. So we host students for different research projects. It's a great way for them to formulate their own research questions and then, determine their control and what's their study, and actually run their experiment. And a lot of it, I would say, is very entrepreneurial as well, in exploring new ideas and testing those ideas on the ground, whether it's here in the field like this photo is showing, or even testing some ideas with our CSA members. We had a student a few years ago who kind of studied our CSA members and then implemented a few programs in order to see, did that help people's confidence with new types of vegetables in their kitchen. Moving on to the community engagement piece, we host a number of events each year. Actually, that's one of the numbers that I'm most proud of. Over here is there's some snippets from our annual, it's our 4-year impact report of the first 4 years of the pilot program. So in 4 years, we hosted nearly 240, so roughly 60 per year, community events, tours, and work days. And I think what's great about these is students are often the target audience, but so are community members. But then even more importantly is students who plan and run these events. And there's a lot of learning opportunity that happens through that. And I think that could be something that, if you're working with, especially like high school age students, to think about having them not just do garden things or food related things, but are there some events that they could plan and run where they are the teachers and they're also going through the steps, the learning process of how do you plan an event, how do you identify a target audience, how do you convince them to come, all of these different things are really great learning opportunities. We do also work with a lot of community partners like community gardens, food pantries, our hospital, and master gardeners. And I underline master gardeners because they exist all across Pennsylvania. So if you're not networked already with local master gardeners, that could be an opportunity to help bring more gardening education into the classroom through their help. They have required service hours that they have to complete every year to maintain certification. So they're often excited about, a new energetic partnership in their area. Just sorry, pausing to look at the chat real quick. What is CSA? Oh, yeah, Jade, you answered it. Yeah, great question. CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. In our case, we call it Campus Supported Agriculture because it's open to just faculty, staff, and students on our campus. But yeah, Shelley, you're correct. It's typically called Community Supported Ag. The idea is that you prepay for a share of the harvest, and you get then a portion of what's harvested each week based on what's in season. And so you're directly supporting a farmer throughout their season. Yes, excellent way to teach others about farming, for sure. Yeah, you get a firsthand view of what seasonality looks like and also what some of the challenges are for farmers. Another really significant aspect of that community piece for us is our student farm club. And I think I saw in the chat, at least one of you said that you oversee some after school programming. I think that clubs and the after school program piece is a really great way that you could really integrate a lot of these kinds of ideas and concepts. And we all know that learning happens in the classroom and in the formal class day, but there are so many opportunities for learning and growth and engagement in these kind of co-curricular and extracurricular spaces. And we certainly see that here with Student Farm Club. So our club is organized into project teams, and they don't have to do only with the farm. Many of them, do use the farm in different ways, but they're not necessarily out there like farming per se. So here's an example of the some of the primary project teams that we have. So we've got students who are interested in plant-based eating, and we'll do events around that. Or we have students who plan our cooking collaborative, which is peer-to-peer cooking classes. It's kind of cute. They'll run them on a Friday night, and sometimes like other students will come as like date night to a cooking class. So it's kind of entrepreneurial in that respect too. Farm Club could be a good foundation for supervised ag experiences. Yeah, that's a good thought for sure. I just wanted to share a couple of photos of one of our project teams, our hydroponics team. So we use greenhouse space on campus. This is right next to the creamery. So if you're ever there and you see the banner on one of the greenhouses, that's our hydroponic space. So this is wonderful because it provides engagement through the winter months as well for students. And you can see here it's dark out. So they're in there. This was probably like, I don't know, mid or late November, after classes are done for the day, get in there for the evening and work on harvest. Moving into the segment of our mission, the Farm to Campus piece. As I said, we do sell to the campus dining commons, which is called Housing and Food Services. And then we run the campus supported agriculture program, which I kind of just explained. And then we are also working to develop more of a partnership with our Lions Pantry, which is our student food pantry on campus. There's growing attention to food insecurity needs among student population. And I'm sure you guys see that with your students as well. So we have a student run pantry on campus. It's been a little challenging because we haven't had refrigeration there, but it's going through some renovations this summer, and we'll have refrigeration then online this fall. So we can hopefully provide more, healthful food options and more diversity through that partnership to the pantry in the future. I think this is especially important for us as we're really helping our students develop leadership skills, that they're not just gaining how to grow tomato kind of skills through the student farm, but it's really much broader than that. So they're learning professional communication skills, program management. Our students write grants and seek funding for the program to maintain the program. And then I think that those life skills are really important too. How to cook, how to eat healthy, how to eat cheap but healthy, some home gardening, and then like I was talking about the hand tools piece too. It's shocking how many students have never used a screwdriver or a hammer or whatever. And then ultimately it's just a lot of fun, and that you make, lifelong friends and memories. And I'm sure, especially those of you who do after school programming, where it just sort of like feels like a different, more social space, that people become really close friends and take great pride in what they accomplish as a team working together. So that's kind of just a quick background on the mission of our program. I do have a few photos to give you a bit of a virtual tour as best as we can in this space of what a year on the farm looks like. So here's early spring. Students come in and do seeding in the greenhouse. So we grow out all of our seedlings for the farm, but then the club also runs a big plant sale each spring. And so they're starting seedlings for that. There on the right are some seedlings labeled and ready to go for plant sale. I think we have a little bit of a slide on this later, but definitely especially like high school level, I think something like a plant sale. Our students also do like a succulent sale, and those are super popular. Who doesn't love a cute succulent, right? I think the entrepreneurship and kind of planning skills that you develop through that are really good for students to gain. More photos growing on those seedlings in the greenhouse. This is the best place to be when it's still cold and gray and all of that outdoors, to have all these green growing things in the greenhouse at that time. And then as things warm up and we start moving outside, here's some photos of what bed prep and planting look like. Our plan today isn't to really talk about like garden bed setup or whatever, but if anybody has questions or anything on that, we're happy to field those as well, for those of you who have gardens or are thinking about starting them on your school grounds. A few more photos as the plants fill in and grow. There's lots of weed management, obviously, to do. We do now have the season extension. I mentioned the high tunnels. Here on the left is I think a fairly recent photo of a couple of the tunnels. But then here on the right, this photo was taken back in January. So this shows what tunnels can do in terms of season extension for a farm. We had beets and carrots, a couple beds of spinach, green onions, some lettuce, and then cabbage in here. And over here, you can see, here's the snow. So remember, we had a really snowy winter, and this was even more so because it's all the snow falling off the roof. So it's really piled up out there, but all the crops were nice and cozy inside, and we were able to harvest all that in, I think it was late March when we harvested out of that tunnel. So then continuing on with kind of the year in the farm, harvesting and wash pack, we have to think a lot about like uniformity and things like that. So for example, here, bunching the kale, and how do you ensure that every bunch is the same? If you're selling to your CSA, you don't want somebody to get a huge kale bunch and somebody else to get hardly any, because they all pay the same price. So just thinking about standard operating procedures and things like that are good skills for the students to learn as well. A little more of harvest. And then since we sell the dining commons, it's important to also think about like labeling, invoicing, weights, pricing, all of that. So lots of great business skills and communication skills learned along the way too. And then here's a photo in one of the dining commons. They're really supportive. They keep signage out. Here's a permanent sign promoting that partnership between the dining halls and the student farm. So they love getting the fresh produce. And it's really cool that it's grown by students for students. And students take a lot of pride in that. A couple photos of our CSA pickup. These pre-packed bins, and then the member just comes by and picks up their stuff. And then last photo, just of a little bit of tour and event photos. Here's one obviously during COVID. We weren't able to do as much this past year, but we're able to get a few tours in. I think this one was Student Farm Club came out for a visit. So that's it for program background. Wanted to just be sure to hear, pause, and share my email, because I think at the end, since we'll be in the workshop, we won't have any slides up. So if you need or want to get in touch for any reason, there's my email there. And I think this is my cue, Jade, to switch to you. So let me stop sharing so you can share the video.
Yeah, so we're just gonna continue kind of talking about what it looks like when we harvest and pack. So we just have a 2-minute video to share, and then we'll move on to section 2. Okay. So that was something just a little cute that the interns put together to kind of give a visual for what it really looks like when we harvest. Sorry, my computer's being slow. All right, here we go. Share screen. All right, so the next section that we will discuss is about different types of plants and different ways you can use plants either in the classroom or in your own time, and different ways that you can grow plants. So our 3 sections are about different facilities and physical resources that you can grow and incorporate agriculture into the curriculum. And then the second section will be plant uses and different ways that you can incorporate plants into an educational side of things. And then the last section will be 3 lesson plans that we use as the student farm when we host middle school and high school students on the farm and do some youth education. So we will be sharing these slides after the presentation. So here is a link that I included where there are different types of growing methods that you can do your own research on if you'd like, but I'll talk about a few of them today. So the first one is raised beds. These are semi-permanent structures that can be filled with soil and incorporate compost for planting. This is a simpler way for planting, so you don't have to disrupt the soil, and it can be moved when you're done planting. It is also relatively low cost because you just need wood planks to form into a box to then grow some plants in there, and it can be on the ground like in this photo, or it can be about waist high like a table. And the student farm has had some raised beds on the farm in the past for some students to do research about the different growing techniques. And then, like you see in the photo, and what we plant mostly on the student farm is directly into the field. This is a designated plot of land where plants are grown directly into the soil, and we use minimal tilling and cultivation to kind of prepare the soil for growing. And we grow in bed and row formations. So as you can kind of see in the photo, we grow the crops in the beds, and then in the walkways in between the beds is where we can walk up and down the bed without damaging the crops. And then this is a photo of community gardens. The Penn State has a community garden plot where you can have you can rent a small space to grow whatever you choose. And they're kind of sectioned off. You can put up your own fencing and different methods to reduce some pest damage. And it could be a good solution for students if there's a community garden near the school. It could be a quick walk as a class to kind of go maintain your plot. Yeah, and it's also a good way to connect with other gardeners because you will be growing amongst other people in this space. And then the fourth way to grow crops or other plants are in permaculture gardens. These are gardens designed with the environment taken into consideration. It's designed to support the environment through diversity of crops and insects, and also it could be helpful in a school setting if you can use your landscaping around your school in a permaculture garden type of way. And you can incorporate edible crops instead of landscaping shrubs, which brings me to the next section, which is edible landscaping. This is a really beautiful way to incorporate vegetables and edible crops or edible flowers into the already placed landscaping for a school or home. And this can include annuals or perennial plants. Perennials are a plant that grows year after year, while annuals are something that students could seed, transplant, and harvest every year. So that annuals could be something that students can, each grade can get a different life cycle of the plant out of it. Next is grow lights. These are LED lights that replicate the energy the sun provides to plants. These are nice for indoor growing settings. So it could be nice in a science lab or just in any average classroom. So students can see how their plants grow every day inside the classroom. And it's also nice to have a controlled climate to reduce pest damage or just the temperature. So this is kind of a more modern way of growing plants. And then backyard and wild foraging is something that's easy and like more of a sciencey setting. So going outdoors and seeing what you can find, learning how and what weeds are edible, and of course doing your research before eating anything. So this is low cost. All you have to do is go outside and see what you can find. The internet will help you identify some plants. Of course, there are apps that you can like take a picture of a plant and it'll tell you what it is and all of the different qualities of a plant. And this could be fun to harvest some things in nature and bring them back to the classroom to do some research and learn about the different types of plants. So the next section will be some plant ID and how to use plants post-harvest. So first is tasting and sampling. On the farm, we grow many things that aren't necessarily like a profitable crop for selling, but because we grow a wide variety of crops, over 100 different crops, some are just for fun, for tasting and showing our tours and visitors. So we grow ground cherries. This is a photo of nasturtium flowers, which are kind of a spicy edible flower, and the leaves are edible as well. And mint and cherry tomatoes are good for just eating right off the plant. And a lot of the plants that I will talk about in the plant uses, Leslie has some with her, and she will do a little show and tell after this section. So the next plant use is just raw eating. A lot of vegetables don't need cooking to be eaten. So this is a photo of cucumbers, obviously, and of course salad greens and berries do not need preparation before consuming. And then, of course, cooking. This is a photo of peppers and zucchini, but spinach you can also use in cooking. This next section is beautifying the classroom. This could be super fun just to have some decorations in the classroom be plant related. It could be really fun for students to press flowers that they find in foraging in their textbooks, and then use those to make art. As you can see in the photo, there's some dried flowers hanging upside down, but also just some flowers in a vase with no water that look beautiful even when they're dead. And then, of course, garlands and wreaths or even flower crowns for the young kids that think that's fun to wear their plants. And then plant uses are also very important in supporting the ecosystem. So pollination is super important to keep plants thriving and keep bees and other insects alive. So there are a lot of Pennsylvania natives that we grow on the farm, including goldenrod, but some others are mountain mint and cardinal flower. This is a photo of goldenrod. As you can see, it's super beautiful, lots of bees thriving on it. And that's a really good way to kind of show the life cycle of a plant and how it pollinates and thrives. The next one is seed saving. So all plants produce seeds to help them repopulate, but it's also fun to kind of actively go find the plant seeds and save them to replant. So this is a photo of a really interesting looking plant, Nigella. And those that you see in the picture are little seed pods before the flower blooms, and they're super beautiful. But other plants that you can do this with are tomatoes, beans, and lettuces, believe it or not. So that could be fun. And then another plant use is using plants as dye crops. There's a class at Penn State that is taught by a professor, and it focuses on using flowers and other plants as dye crops. So we grow a lot of dye crops on the farm for that class to come out and kind of harvest them and figure out which different ways they can use those to dye fabrics. But some edible dye crops, as you can see in the photo, are some beets and onions, but amaranth is another flower that makes beautiful red dyes. And then I think this is the last one for plant uses, but plants are also used in a lot of medicines. So you can see here lavender is supposed to be like relaxing, soothing. And then flaxseed, turmeric, and yarrow are also something that you can harvest, and kind of, even if you're just learning about plants and teaching about plants and the ways that they're used in medicine, it's very educational. Oh, one more. This is a photo of chamomile being turned into tea. I'm sure everyone's heard of chamomile tea, but plants are used to make teas a lot of the time. So these are some things that we have grown on the farm, and Leslie grows in her yard, and she'll be able to show you. But chamomile, lemon balm, bee balm, which I think is a Pennsylvania native, and raspberry leaves and hibiscus are great for making teas. And then we catered this one kind of to the middle school, high school age, because they are able to have more autonomy in the way that they use plants and get more creative. So something that the student farm, you've heard Leslie talk about it a little bit, is our plant sale and our small scale CSA. This is something that the students, if they have enough space and can grow enough produce, they can sell plants, whether or not it's to other faculty or staff. And also harvesting plants and cooking and making a bake sale, or just like a potluck within the class, and kind of using the plants in an entrepreneurial way. So that is something that could be interesting for teaching about plants in the way that it can be business. And this is a photo of the CSA packed at the student farm. Okay, and I will stop sharing my screen, or I will try at least. Okay. And Leslie has some plants to show.
Awesome. Thanks, Jade. So I kind of just foraged in my backyard in my kitchen a little bit this morning to bring some plants to show you guys, some of which Jade already highlighted in the slides, but just wanted to bring a few things in. We'll start with teas. Chamomile is a really easy one to grow, and it's nice because it will self-seed. And so once you've got it, you'll always have it pretty much. I also was trying to think about things. I mean, obviously it's the end of June now, but I was trying to think about what was really actively producing, like within the May or early June, when you're more likely still in class. But I think the teas, or I guess tisanes technically, if they're with herbs, would be a nice way to bring plants in the classroom. And, you know, simply bring in an electric kettle and pour water over them, and then students can taste and try these different things. So chamomile, you can make a tea with the fresh flowers, but I also dry my chamomile. I just have like a wire mesh tray kind of thing, and just air dry it. And then personally, I, use this to make tea throughout the winter and everything. So chamomile is a really fun, easy one. Another one that tends to bloom pretty early and also keeps blooming pretty late into fall would be calendula. So I harvest my calendula and dry it as well. Here's a calendula flower that I just picked today. It also has some medicinal properties. There's a variety called Resina calendula, Resina, that's supposed to be have the most of that like resin, the stickiness of the plant, those compounds that are the medicinally active compounds of it, but also nice as a cut flower. So they're really beautiful. And calendula is a type of marigold, so they're typically pretty tolerant against different pests, especially those mammal pests. Don't tend to bother them, mammals that we have a lot of. Some other fun things as far as eating your weeds and wild foraging. I dried some red clover from my backyard recently, so I should have gone to find a fresh one because they're a little hard to see dried, but I guess you can see it all right. So these you can make tea with, or I don't know, like as a kid, I remember like sucking on the little pieces. They kind of taste sweet. So there's an example of just an edible weed. Another edible weed that's kind of fun. Oh, I should have been asking this all along. I know I asked this in the first session, but it's kind of fun to see what ID you guys know. So it's getting wilty, but can anybody tell? You can type in the chat. Can you tell what this is? Anyone willing to take a stab at it? It's not mint. It's kind of looking, it's harder to tell. Maybe there's a leaf you can. Can you see that any better? The camera's not right. Yeah, there we go. It's a oxalis. So it's technically not a clover. I always grew up calling it clover, but this is a type of clover, red clover. There's like red, white, crimson clover, but this is oxalis. It is called shamrock plant, but it's actually woodcress. So this is edible. It has a lemony flavor. Both the leaves and the flowers are edible. And this I just pulled from my garden. It's a pretty annoying weed that comes up everywhere. But I also grabbed one of my house plants, which is this lovely oxalis. So I think usually it's called purple shamrock, but all of these leaves and the purple flowers are also edible. So if you're looking for just something really simple for your classroom, that both, can beautify the space and also have some interesting flavors for kids to try, students to try, this could be a good candidate. Another one might be aloe. As you know, that's good for sunburn. So actually like cutting it open and getting to see the gel come right out of the plant itself might be a fun way, an easy resource way for students to interact with some plants. A couple other things I snagged. Oh, I grabbed some lavender because this I think is nice. You can make tea. I actually infuse it in sugar and then make like lavender sugar to cook with. It's kind of fun. But I think this is like just kind of an example or an idea. Like lavender smells really interesting, and just working with students, it's maybe more applicable for the younger age groups, but I don't know, encouraging students to think about their observational skills and like working on different adjectives to describe the scent or describe the like sensation that they get from the scent or the color of the plant. Because obviously there's many purples or many pinks or what have you in the natural space. So this is another easy one. And something like this, I think could be really easy maybe or hopefully easier to convince your like lawn folks, your landscaping folks to incorporate into just the landscape of your school grounds. And then, you can get out and clip some really easily. I grabbed another one really quick that would be an edible landscape example. Can anybody tell what this is? Anybody want to take a stab at it in the chat? Maybe if you can see the leaf, it's a little easier. There's slightly fuzzy leaves. It's an aromatic plant. It's an herb. Sage, yep. Christoph got it. So this is sage when it flowers. It does flower a little later. It started by mid-June. So for your school year, you might miss the flowers, but throughout the summer, I mean, this is just a beautiful landscape plant. So, you know, if you can convince some folks to tuck some things like this into their perennial landscape beds that you already have around your school, then this could become a resource for you to potentially bring some things into the classroom. I see there's a question there. When you make teas, do you just pour hot water over the flowers and let steep? Yeah. Russian sage, I don't know. I think that's the kind of sage that is more like burned for incense. I might not be right about that though. I'm not a sage expert. This is just common sage. But yeah, Joanne, I just have an electric kettle and pour it over. It works for both the fresh or the dried. Usually the dried, you might get a little more like flavor concentration because there's not already moisture in the plant. So the plants are kind of like reabsorbing moisture and like pulling more of those flavors out. But yeah, pouring boiled water over fresh or dried can work. A couple other examples that I grabbed. I did grab some Nigella from the yard. This is also called Love in a Mist. The flowers getting really wilty, but there's what the flowers look like. And then they put on these seed pods after they flower, and they're really weird looking alien things. Steep it in a French press or put in a coffee filter. Yeah, you could absolutely. I have like a tea like basket thing, I guess, that I'll put the herb in that so that I'm not having loose pieces of herb. There's also these things called steep sacks. They're like large paper tea bags that are made for like putting your own, like putting a teaspoon of tea inside of it and then put it in your cup. And it's like a long enough sack that then after you're done steeping it, there's enough sticking out that you can like pull it back out of your mug. So yeah, lots of options for keeping the plant material contained so you're not chewing your tea. Nigella is great because it'll flower and it should start setting these seed pods fairly early. So you hopefully could still have some in the spring before the school year is done. And then it's nice because you can dry these and they can be a nice dried flower arrangement in the classroom, but also it's an opportunity to talk about seed biology and take a look at how those seeds, they're kind of lined up and they're really tidily. So for students to kind of get to dissect that and have a look could be really interesting. And then another fun thing is that the seeds are actually edible. They're used, I think, predominantly in like Indian cuisine as a flavor spice addition, just sprinkled over top. The main variety of Nigella that's used for that, you'll usually see it marketed as black cumin, but any of them are edible. I think just that particular variety has the most flavor to it. I did also grab one little bachelor's button because this is another flower that'll self-seed really readily. So once you've planted it, you'll pretty much always have it because it'll reseed itself and come back. And they are edible also. I don't really think they taste like much, but they do have those uses. I grabbed some raspberry leaf. This is nice. In Pennsylvania, raspberries grow pretty much everywhere. So even if you're not growing your own, you can wild forage and then just, again, pour the boiled water over these to steep and make tea. I also grabbed, Jade mentioned ground cherries as something for tasting. So I had a little seedling here, so I pulled that out and I want to show you. Does anybody recognize this? What does that look like to you? What other vegetable plant does it look like? Spinach. Do you see the little lantern here? Does that look familiar at all? I know it's a little bit hard in the video. It's not a super common thing, but it kind of looks like a tomatillo, and it's actually in the Solanaceae plant family, the same as tomatoes and tomatillos, potatoes, peppers, all of it. So ground cherries, though, are nice because that little fruit that's growing inside of here is sweet. I think it tastes a little bit, yeah, there you go, Diane. It tastes a little bit like pineapple, I think. And the other nice thing about them is that they're called ground cherries because they're ripe when they drop to the ground. So this little husk will turn brown and then drop off the plant. And so you kind of just pick them up off the ground to eat them. I also think they're really nice for like a schoolyard application because they tend to be pretty pest free. They're pretty easygoing and they kind of just, you know, grow and do their thing. And so throughout those summer months, they'd be fairly low maintenance. And then you'd still have a crop on them come fall when the students come back. So that's ground cherries. And then the last one I want to just highlight, I forgot one. Does anybody know what this is? And any of you who were in the first session and came for the second, no cheating. Any guesses? Lily, yeah, great job. Gretchen got it. It's a daylily. So there's tons of just landscape plants and flowers and things that are edible. If you pick them at this bud stage when they've just colored up, they're sort of like a crunchy, like a green bean with a little bit of interesting, kind of like a spicy kick to them. So again, this could be good for students to just like explore different sensory things and, you know, work on like the language around that and how you describe what you're tasting. So literally, yeah, you can just eat your daylilies. No concerns about toxicity. I think that's peace lilies, Diane. I don't think there's toxicity. I mean, everything has toxicity at some point, but I don't know how many you'd have to eat. Like eating a handful, to my knowledge. I mean, do your own research, but yeah, I'll like munch on mine. I've also seen recipes for pickled daylilies. Okay, so then here's the last thing is, did anybody recognize this weed? Yep, pokeweed, pokeberry. Yeah, so this is super common all across Pennsylvania. In my own yard, I intentionally let some of it grow because I like to throw it into bouquets. It's just so like kind of tropical and wild. So this would be another way to have students explore is go out and harvest their own bouquets. You know, there's lots you can look at as far as plant morphology and the like. So yeah, I think the beautification piece is a really fun one. I decorate my own house with a lot of dried material. This is Crispidia, which is a flower that I dried. And then like, here's another example, some sea oats and some grasses that I just keep in a bouquet, in a vase, and decorate with. So, and I make, you know, I have like little wreaths and garlands and things too, just around the house. So that's another idea for the classroom. I think that's everything I had as far as show and tell. If any of you have additional things that you've used, please keep adding those in the chat, but I'm going to turn it back over to Jade for now.
All righty. So the next little section is some activities and lesson plans that we have used on the student farm just to kind of teach about plants a little more. So the first one is the food system class activity. I'm just going to briefly go through these, but you guys will have these slides to like delve deeper if you're interested. So the first one that we use is getting students to draw what they think the food system would look like from plant to consumption. So you can see on the right, there's a little graphic that kind of shows the breakdown. It shouldn't take too long, just need whiteboards and markers or a piece of paper, and then kind of going through with the students after and explaining the food system and really diving into like where their food comes from. Here is another graphic of the industrial food system. Of course, you can pick and choose what type of food system. Of course, there's smaller scale like the CSA. That wouldn't go to the wholesaling, retailing side of things. And then the next lesson plan is about plants and products. So this is kind of a matching card game. You can print out a picture of a plant and a picture of a product of what that plant can make. And just having the students match the matching cards together of the crop and the product that go together. And then we have some discussion questions that you can use at the end if you are interested in making it more of a discussion-based activity. And then last is the soil compaction activity. Taking soil from 2 different places and seeing how fast water filters through is a good indicator of assessing a soil's compaction. And Leslie reminded me in the last session that we do this experiment in our beds versus our walkways. Like I was saying, the way that we grow our plants on the farm. And it's insane to see how much slower the soil or the water filters through the soil in the pathways that we walk on, how walking can just simply compact the soil so much more. So this is kind of more of a hands-on demonstration rather than students doing their own, if that's how you want to do things. And then some evaluation questions as well. All right, section 3 is going to be the microgreens discussion and demonstration. We will go through a few slides and kind of go back and forth between the PowerPoint and the demo just because of the way that the demo has to go. So I'm going to mute and Leslie is going to chat about microgreens a bit. Leslie, would you rather do the water first and then do all of the slides?
I'll do this real quick and just explain what are microgreens.
Okay. All right. I'm going to mute them.
Thanks, Jade. All right, so here's the hands-on portion of our time together. Hopefully you all have a kit with you, a microgreens kit. This is a workshop that 3 of our students and I planned and ran this spring for a college student audience, but I think the lessons apply pretty similarly for a secondary age group. And so we're going to do this together as a workshop, and hopefully it gives you some ideas for how you might use this in your class. We did do it virtually this spring, so it works decently well in that virtual space, or obviously in person works too. It's just some extra planning for getting things mailed out to people or have a pickup or whatever if you're doing it virtually. But the other nice benefit of this is that microgreens are really low maintenance and take up very little space. So your students could do these at home, and all it takes is a small bit of countertop space to grow them. So it's a really flexible opportunity for students to be growing their own plants that they can then eat. So microgreens, what are microgreens? They're basically the stem plus the cotyledon. You could harvest them just at cotyledon stage, or you can let the first set of true leaves emerge as well. And that is a microgreen. So it's the initial little seedling of what would be a future, vegetable or herb plant. And they're very nutrient rich, nutrient dense, because they contain all of that food source that the seed itself holds for that new baby seedling. They have kind of intense flavors and also really fun flavors, because if you eat the mature version of it, these little seedlings the flavor is very reminiscent of whatever their future could be. So where broccoli, when you eat broccoli, you're eating the like the floret, the flower head on it. When you eat the broccoli microgreen, it tastes like those flowers do. And then they also have a short growing season. These that you're going to start, given that it's summer and pretty warm, you might be ready to pick them, harvest them in about 10 days. When we did this in April, it was about 14 days. And if you did them like in the, dead of winter kind of time frame, might be a little bit longer than that, but less than 3 weeks. So really quick from start to finish. Okay, Jade, you can take down the, I have a couple of kind of lessons to show, but I wanted to pause and get us started with the actual hands-on piece, because if your soil is like mine, it's very dry and it's going to take it a little bit to start soaking up water. So we're going to do that part first. Talk about a couple of lesson ideas you could do with the workshop along the way, and then come back and actually add our seeds. So I'm going to do that. All right. So you should have a little container. You got yours, I think, in the mail. Mine is a saved takeout container. COVID happened, and if you're like me, you have dozens of these takeout containers shoved away in some cupboard where you thought, wow, these seem really durable and useful. I can't bring myself to toss these. I'll figure out some use. Well, today they are a greenhouse. Or somebody in the first session said a terrarium. Yes. So this nice little lid is kind of a greenhouse. So take your lid off. You'll need to grab a couple things that weren't in your kit, but they're going to need. So maybe go grab these real quick. You need something sharp to stab some holes in the bottom of this. I'm going to use a paring knife. That's kind of, in my opinion, the easiest. An X-Acto knife, box cutter, anything like that with a sharp tip will work. You're going to stab some holes in, and then while you're grabbing that, you're also going to need water. If you have a spray bottle water mister, that's really handy. I'm just going to use, I have a Pyrex measuring cup that I'm going to use for my water. So step one, we need to add drainage holes to our microgreen greenhouse here. So I'm literally going to just stab. They don't have to be pretty. They just need to function. I'm putting them about an inch apart or so. It kind of cracks as you go, so you can't necessarily control how large the holes are, but hopefully you can kind of see most of those holes. I just want water to be able to flow readily. If I've overwatered, you don't want flooding, you don't want mold from being too wet, so you want decent drainage. Once you've done that, then you can just set this under here for the time being as a little tray under your container and grab your soil next. This actually is one, we don't have any slides on this, but this could be an idea for another lesson that you could do with your class in learning about different materials and different properties. My soil probably looks a little different from yours. This is just some that I had here. It's actually technically called a soilless media, and it is designed to optimize the ratio of water retention capacity with still having air pockets and being able to have airflow happening through the soil. So I think that's a good biology lesson to think about. Well, we all know plants need water, but did you know that plants need air? And that lesson on soil compaction, as an example, helps to iterate why soil compaction is so bad. You're reducing air in the soil, and plants can't grow in that anaerobic environment. So in my mix, it's specially made to maximize that in this, pot kind of contained setting. So mine's basically just a combination of peat, which is a harvested material, and perlite, which is a manufactured material. But these all have really good water holding capacity. So go ahead and dump your soil in. Mine is very dry. You can see the dust coming off of it. It's that dry. When you dump it, you may find that it's pretty uneven. Use your fingers to break up any clumps. We want a pretty even soil surface. Our goal here is good seed to soil contact so that the soil can adequately deliver moisture to our seeds. And if it's too rough, then they're not going to get equal access to the water that's in the soil. Some will be more exposed to air and dry out faster, and some might get flooded and tend to be prone to some molding or rotting in here if they stay too wet. So level that out. I mean, it doesn't have to be like laser level by any means, but try to make it generally uniform. One thing that I teach out in the field is that the level of soil fineness or uniformity that you need to strive for is relative to the size of the seed or plant that you're planting. So if you are on the one end of the spectrum transplanting grown seedlings, then they don't need a super uniform soil because they're already established and their roots are going to take off, underground. Versus if you have like large seeds like squash or pumpkins, those could have some soil roughness, but they need to be a little smoother because they need you can't have too big of air pockets or whatever in the soil, because then the seeds won't get moisture. And then on the extreme end, you have really small seeds like lettuce or carrots are two of the main examples on the veggie front. Also some of your flower seeds. Chamomile actually if you buy a packet of chamomile seed, it looks like dust. So you want a really nice uniform seed bed so that everybody's getting equal air, water, light, etc. So we've got our soil in here. Now we're going to start watering it, and we're going to slowly add water and then give it some time to let that water soak in. So I just have a measuring cup here that I put some water into. I'm just going to slowly pour some water over it. You can kind of see it's just sort of pooling, and that's because my soil is so dry. Yours might not be quite like this. But what I'm going to do is just keep adding some water, and I'm checking underneath for that water to start coming out the drainage holes. And when it starts coming out those drainage holes, that's my signal that I've added enough and I've reached kind of its water holding capacity. Add a little more or a lot more. Oh, there we go. I see some coming through now. All right. Our goal here in pre-watering is these seeds are quite small, and once we do seed here in a bit, after this water has some time to absorb in, we don't want to water too heavily after that, because if we do, we're liable to just flood the seeds and like make them like wash to one side or the other and, not stay at the right density. So by pre-watering, we're giving the seeds the water they'll need, but we're doing it before they're actually in here, so as not to disturb them. Okay, Jay, you can pull those slides back up. Thank you. So there's a few slides in here. In the interest of time, I'm going to kind of buzz through some of the nutrition ones, but these are in here. Microgreens do have very high levels of nutrients in them, and based on what they are, it can differ. So I know we'll be sharing the slides out after, so you'll be able to review those later. But this is kind of a repeat of the prior, but I did want to pause on this one. Sometimes people ask, what do you actually do when you eat microgreens? I like to toss them on top of salads. They add some nice visual and some nice texture. I also like to toss them on top of an omelet or something. You always look kind of fancy, actually, if you have these, microgreens that you get to toss on. One of my students, she says she really loves adding them to pizza. So that's an idea. I also this spring made my own ramen one week. So that was very nice to have these little microgreens. I felt very professional sprinkling them over my ramen. Lindsay said you eat them with everything, tacos, salads, on soup. Yeah, really, they're just a nice garnish to, get that nice plate look on whatever dish you're making, and then add just some nice texture, color, and flavor to the dish. Next slide. Okay. So you'll have those. We're not going to show the slide because we're going to do the video, but you'll have the slide in there for later. Students tend to try new foods if they help to grow them. Yes, there is research to show if students grow it and if students prepare it, they're more likely to eat it. And if they grow and prepare it, they're more likely to eat it then, even more. So the other lesson with this workshop that I wanted to just walk through briefly is kind of a seed biology lesson. So if you could open your seeds and take a look, maybe take one or two out and feel them. And in the chat, could you just type a 1 or 2 word description of what you would describe the seeds as? Tiny. When you work with lots of different seeds, you find out that tiny is relative. Literally try buying a pack of parsley seed or chamomile seed. That's really tiny. Yeah. But on the flip side, in mine, I have some sunflower seed because I made my little pack from what I had on hand. So relative to sunflower seed, what you have is definitely tiny. Round, brown, small. Yeah. It's an opportunity for students to take a look. If you have microscopes, it could be fun to put some seeds under the microscope and see what you can see. But to me, I think the main thing is to really stop and realize these little seeds, they kind of look like sand or dirt or pebbles or something, but all of those things are inert materials. Sand, pebbles are not living things, but seeds, even though they kind of look similar and they, can't crawl or move or make sound, they're living, they're respirating, they're breathing, and as such, they can die. And so if you think about this little seed, that seed coat is permeable and interacts with its environment. And so it's designed that once water comes in contact with it, that it begins the germination process. So for farmers, gardeners, that has a lot of application of thinking about seed storage and the age of your seeds. You always want to store seeds in dry, cool, dark conditions to help them live as long as possible. If you store seeds where it's hot or moist or overly dry, very dry, then they're likely to die. And if you try to do seed saving, then you won't really have success because your seeds will die over time. So those are all lessons you can talk with the students about. And then the next piece that they'll actually get to see over the next couple of days is germination and emergence. So in this little seed is the baby plant, basically. Seeds first send down their little root hair, and hopefully in here you might actually see those in like a field setting. If you're planting beans, those are a couple inches under the soil, so you're not really going to see that root emerging, but that emerges first. And then the cotyledons, these are dicots, so 2 seed leaves come out of this seed and emerge, and those are different from the true leaves. And in terms of plant families and finding out who's related to whom, what you'll find in your mix is that all of your seeds are in the same plant family. So all their cotyledons are going to look the same, even though the final plant that would grow out if you, planted them in the garden will look very different. The cotyledons look pretty similar. So yeah, lots of seed biology, lots of different seeds you can use for microgreens in your mix. We should keep moving, trying to be cognizant of the time here. So let's move on to the exciting part, which is planting your seeds. So you've got your tray of soil. Hopefully that water has soaked in decently well. So at this point, you're just gonna, I think you have a scoop with yours. I don't have a scoop, but I'm gonna estimate that about 1.5 scoops worth is the right amount, the right density. You're just gonna sprinkle your seeds all across your soil with as uniform of density as you can. And I have 2 very different sized seeds because I have these sunflower seeds in here. I'm doing some sunflower sprouts, but just to show, these are a mix of brassicas here, kale and broccoli and cabbage. So these are what you guys have. So you're just gonna spread them throughout, try to do it as uniformly as possible. And then hopefully they've got pretty decent soil contact, but if you want, you can just kind of gently tap them down. We don't want to cover them with any soil because they don't really need the soil. Soil is there as a mechanical support for plants, but in this case, they're not going to be subjected to high wind or extreme weather environments because they're just going to sit on your countertop. So they don't need they don't need to be really in the soil, like planted in, they're just going to stay at the surface. And the other benefit of this is it helps avoid when the microgreens grow, you won't have like soil clinging to the plants. So the little microgreens should stay pretty clean, and you'll be able to just clip them and then use them in whatever you're cooking them or eating them with, which by the way, I mean, you can cook microgreens, but I wouldn't really recommend cooking them. They're pretty delicate and you're going to lose a lot of the nutritional quality if you cook them. So I would just sprinkle them over top fresh on things. So your seeds are planted. What now? So you're going to, well, I have now a lot of water that drained through, so I can't really set this on top or else I'm going to make a mess. But what you want to do is take that lid and put it back on top. So right now, these particular seeds don't need light to germinate. And so we're just going to cover them up. And our goal is to really keep our moisture in for the next couple of days and hopefully keep an eye on them, check them each day. And if you need to add water, you can. Right now or tomorrow, over these next couple of days, you could just spritz some water over top. But hopefully you're keeping enough water in with having the lid over, that they've got the moisture they need. You are trying to control moisture and you're also watching for seedling emergence. Once you have about 60% or so of these that have germinated and you see green, then it's time to take the lid off, because what you're trying to avoid on that far end is you don't want mold to start. So then you want airflow. So at that point, take the lid off and put it underneath as a drip tray. And now you can start daily watering just to keep them moist, but you don't want them like overly damp or like in standing water. And then in about 10 days or so, you should have microgreens ready to eat. And what I do is I literally just kind of grab like a little clump of how many I want and kind of pinch them all together and take a pair of scissors. I guess I do have some scissors here. And while you're holding them, you can just clip them as low as you can because all that stem is edible, and clip off what you want to eat at that time. And then I let the other ones continue growing until I'm ready to use them. They should last you, I would say, about 5 days. Again, it depends like how warm it is in your space and how rapidly they're growing. But you could just kind of, clip another section each day. In the first session, somebody asked, will they regrow? They won't. You are killing that seedling by clipping all of its energy source off. But once you've cleared out, if you want to kind of extract the layer of seeds, then you could reuse your soil if you wanted and put sprinkle another layer of seeds and repeat it with the same soil. These are being harvested so quickly that they're not really drawing nutrition from the soil itself. They're really just drawing nutrition from what was in that seed. So that is that. We have 2 minutes left, so 2 minutes for questions. Feel free to use the chat. Do any of you have any questions either on these microgreens or anything really? Oh, and Cassidy put your post test there in the chat as well. Hopefully we answered all the questions this time. Can you use any veggie seeds for microgreens? There are some that, if you think about any plant where what you harvest is like the stem or the leaf or the bulb kind of thing, then those you can eat. So for example, like I wouldn't eat tomato microgreens. Yeah, things like tomatoes, peppers, eggplant. Like you're eating the fruit off of those, or zucchini, cucumbers, same thing. Those are crops where you're waiting for the fruit. And so you wouldn't want to use those for microgreens. But we've done peas, actually pea shoots. If you give them a little more space when you're planting and make sure there's some nutrition in the soil and grow them on longer, you can grow pea shoots to like 5 or 6 inches and harvest that whole thing and eat that whole plant. Pea shoots are really yummy. But yeah, any of those leafy veggies where you eat the leaves, beets, spinach, lettuce, carrots, onion seedlings, chard. I've done nasturtium, buckwheat is edible, sunflowers are edible, anything in the brassicas, all of the mix that you guys have. And then somebody asked, are microgreens a special seed? No, I mean, there's places that market seed as microgreen seed, but they're the same seed. So if somebody's selling like kale microgreen seeds, it's the same as the kale packet that you've bought to grow kale. Edible flowers. Yeah, pumpkin flowers, zucchini flowers, those are edible. I still wouldn't eat the microgreen probably, but egg batter, breadcrumbs, stuff with cheese. Yeah, those flowers are really delicious. How can you harvest seeds from mature plants? That's a whole other workshop. We actually hosted a workshop this past spring about seed saving. I believe it's on our YouTube channel, actually, if you wanted to look it up. He didn't really get into like the nuts and bolts of seed harvesting and seed saving, but it depends on the plant. It differs plant by plant. Some are really easy. Like I have some kale that survived the winter, and so I'm intentionally letting it go to seed because that's an attribute that I want to keep. And the seed pods will like dry and dehisce right on the plant. So that one's relatively easy, but other ones you have a little bit more of a process to go through. So that'd be something to, find some books and do some research on. Do you offer continuing ed courses or workshops? We don't. We really come back to school, come back to college and come work with us. We really focus a lot of our education like on students with some for the community like this, but no certificates or anything at this time. I'm always in school. Aren't we all? I mean, our gardens are school and the woods and all the rest of it.